Assalamualaikum. This is Qurra-tul-ain Altaf, Assistant Professor in Economics Department, Government Girls Degree College, Nawabshah. My dear student, this is my third lecture which is derived from the very famous essay, an essay in the first principle of population. In this lecture, we will discuss Malthusian theory of population growth, and this theory is very essential and useful for the students who are enrolled in first year commerce, first year arts, BCom part 1 and BA part 1. So let's begin today's lecture with the contents of the theory. These are the main table of contents. We will discuss the definitions of population and its different kinds. Thomas Robert Malthus and its contribution to population theory. After that, we will discuss in detail the Malthusian theory of population growth. It will comprises on two parts. In first part, we will discuss population and food supply, and in the second portion, we will discuss population control by two types of checks. Number one, positive checks, or sometimes we call natural checks, and second, negative or preventive checks. After understanding these nature of these checks, we will discuss the core principle of Malthus essay, Malthusian catastrophe, and after that we will discuss the proposed solution of Malthus catastrophe, Malthusian theory's validity in today's context, criticism of the Malthusian theory of population, the applicability of Malthusian theory of population in developed as well as in developing countries, and especially we will discuss the case of Pakistan under the light of Malthusian theory of population. And finally, the conclusion will be incorporated at the end of the lecture. I want you to be familiarized with the main concepts of population and its different kinds. First of all, I want you to be understand by the term population, what the population is. Actually, population is described as total number of males, females, boys and girls of different ages residing in a distant locality, a city, region, district or country at some definite point in time. For instance, 2018. Underpopulation. This occurrence is said to be when there are far more resources in an area, that is food, production, energy and minerals that can be made use of by the people living there. Overpopulation. This is said to occur when there are too many people relative to the technology available in an area to maintain an adequate standard of living. Optimum population is said to be achieved when the number of peoples working with all the available resources produces the highest capital economic return, resulting in the highest standard of living and good quality of life. Of Thomas Robert Malthus, an English scholar and a clerk who born in 1766 and died in 1834 at United Kingdom. In his 1798 work, An Essay on the Principle of Population, Malthus examined the relationship between population growth and resources. From this, he developed the idea of Malthusian theory of population growth, in which he wrote that population growth occurs exponentially, so it increases according to the birth rate. The theory was quite revolutionary and controversial in his time. The theory remained debatable whether the principle of Malthus 200 years ago have any relevance to the modern world. Malthusian theory of population growth. Malthus was very much concerned by the condition of poor people and particularly by the rural poverty. And because of this, he was skeptical of the notions of the perfectibility of the society. The first edition of the essay is an a priori polemic, while the second editions included much empirical observation. And Malthus was also inspired Darwin's idea of struggle for survival. The core principles of Malthusian essay. Malthusian theory of population is based on the following three main basic postulates. Number one, the food is essential for man existence. Number two, the passion between the sexes is essential and it will nearly remain in its present state. Number three, law of diminishing return operates in agriculture sector. From these postulates, he deducted that the power of population is indefinitely greater than the power in the earth to produce subsistence, that is, food for man. The effect of these two unequal powers must be kept equal. If the increase in population is unchecked by the preventive checks, it will lead to vice and misery. Population and food supply. Malthusian catastrophe. Malthusian catastrophe, also phrased Malthusian checks, Malthusian crisis, Malthusian disaster, and Malthusian nightmare. It was originally foreseen to be a forced return to subsistence level conditions once population growth had outpaced the agriculture production. Later on, the formulation considered an economic growth limits as well, geometric and arithmetic ratios. The Malthusian theory of population is stated as follows. Number one, there is a natural sex instinct in human beings to increase at a fast rate. As a result, population increases in geometrical progressions, and if it remains unchecked, it doubles itself every 25 years. Thus, starting from 1, population in successive periods of 25 years will be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128 and 256. Number 2. On the other hand, the food supply increases in a slow arithmetic progressions due to the operation of law of diminishing returns, which is based on the supposition that the supply of land is constant. Thus, the food supply in successive similar periods will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 after 200 years. It may be noted that Malthus never stated the law of diminishing return as such. He simply implied it when he wrote, in proportions as cultivation is extended, the additions that could yearly be made to the former average produce must be gradually and regularly diminishing. Number 3. Since the population increases in a geometrical progressions and the food supply increases in arithmetical progressions, the population tends to outrun the food supply. Malthusian catastrophe, a graphical illustration. According to Malthus' theory of population, the population, when unchecked, grows in geometrical progressions, whereas the subsistence grows as an arithmetic progressions. Subsistence will grow, but due to the different growth ratios, population must eventually press against the means of subsistence. As stated earlier, that Malthus' theory was primarily based on the assumptions that the power of population is much greater than the power of the earth to provide subsistence for human beings, meaning that the Malthus believed that the population would soon surpass its food supply. This, in his belief, that could lead to war, famine, disease, infant mortality, and starvation. For this, the checks were then necessary to prevent this. That means the preventive or the negative checks. In this diagram, the population is taken on the vertical axis and the time is taken on the horizontal axis. The food supply and the population in the geometrical progressions are shown in this diagram. This is the point where the population reaches its limit of food supply. There will be nothing but war, famine, and other death or the uh, deadly diseases. In case when if the population rises above the carrying capacity of an environment, it will struggle to survive. There is much debate about what the carrying capacity of planet Earth is. The carrying capacity can be defined as the potential of an area to support life long term. The area must be able to provide food and water, space for living and shelter, essential sources for life, able to absorb waste and population, which can be clearly seen by this diagram. When the population exceeds the carrying capacity, so the population is kept in checks, especially the preventive checks or the positive checks. Number 2, population control. The fourth point is that in order to control the overpopulation which results from the imbalances between population and food supply, Malthus suggested preventive and positive checks. The positive checks includes the plague and pestilence, famine, starvation, war. COVID-19, which is also occurred in 2020, and the preventive checks were also then necessary to prevent this outbreak of overpopulation on this earth. The preventive checks are applied by a man to control the birth rate. They are foresight, late marriages, celibacy, moral restraint, etc. Malthus was against the artificial method of population control and considered them as conjugal fraud. If People fail to check growth of population by the adoption of preventive checks. Positive checks operate in the form of vice, misery, famine, war, diseases, pestilence, flood, and other natural calamities, which tend to reduce the population and thereby bring a balance with the food supply. Proposed solutions of Malthus catastrophe. Malthus suggested that once the ceiling or the catastrophe has been reached, further growth in population would be prevented by two types of checks, that is, negative checks and positive checks. He saw the checks as a natural method of controlling the population on this earth. The positive checks includes the war, famine, starvation, and infant mortality, whereas the negative checks or the preventive checks includes the celibacy, late marriages, family planning, birth control tools, as well as the use of modern technology of contraceptives. Negative or the preventive checks, sometimes we call decreased birth rate. The negative checks were also used to limit the population control. It includes infanticides, abortions, abstinence. So Malthus favored the moral restraints including the delays marriages, sexual abstinence or strict celibacy as a check on population growth to lower the fertility rate. Fertility rate can be described as the number of children per woman. For negative or the preventive checks, Malthus suggested that population growth should be limited by the people if they marry late, yet continue their celibacy and abstinence from the sex before and outside of the marriage. The positive or the natural checks, sometimes we called increased death rate. The positive checks were ways to reduce the population size by the events, for instance, famine, epidemic, or the pandemic diseases, war, so increasing the mortality rate and reducing the life expectancy. This also includes the natural calamities like flood, famine, plague, so on. Plague and famine. Plague is an epidemic disease which causes a high rate of mortality. Sometimes we call plague as pestilence, whereas famine is a great shortage of food which causes unsuccessful existence of humanity. Starvation and war. Starvation is the less severe condition of undernourishment, and due to this starvation, many people die of hunger and other hunger related diseases. Whereas war is a fight between two nations with highly exclusive weapons. War has other several effects on population, including decreasing the birth rate by taking the men away from their wives. My dear student, the main purpose of inserting this slide in today's lecture is to show you that how Malthusian theory has been continuously existing in this world in the form of positive checks. In 1720 plague, a number of people were killed on this earth, and in cholera outbreak 1820, which destroyed and taken away the lives of millions and millions of people. A Spanish flu which occurred in 1920 taken away the lives of many people and reduced the population on this earth. Chinese coronavirus 2020 or COVID-19 it has been started from China in December 2019, killed up the life of many people, and it has been spread out all over the world, which shows that the Malthusian theory has been continuously existing from the times it has been proposed. So the positive checks plays a very important role in reducing the size of population on this earth. The validity of Malthusian theory in 2020. Malthusian theory was proposed in 1798 and it's today we are running in the world of 2020. So let's see the validity of Malthusian theory in today's context. As Malthus proposed some positive checks for in order to reduce the population on this earth, we can simply and easily and evidently see the spread of coronavirus all over the world and reducing the population growth on this earth. Malthusian theory and 2020 coronavirus. The last updated figures of 17th May 2020 reported that due to coronavirus all over the world, a number of people are dying. In different countries like USA, Russia, Spain, UK, Brazil, Italy, France, Germany, Turkey, Iran. You can see here are the total cases found with coronavirus. These are the deaths which are due to the coronavirus or the COVID-19. So you can, and these are the people who have recovered from the coronavirus, and this is the main figure of those people who are in the critical situation. So the Malthusian theory, which was proposed in 1798, here we can see that still today in today's world 2020 the positive checks are occurred in the form of different natural calamities, and coronavirus is also one of the form of the positive checks as proposed by the Malthus. The coronavirus or the COVID-19 is inciting panic for a number of reasons. It's a new virus, which means that no one has the immunity and there is no vaccine. Its novelty means that statistics are not sure yet how it behaves and they have little history to go on. Now we can see that the statistics of Pakistan, which is updated on 17th May 2020, we can see that how coronavirus is spoiling and destroying the health of people. We can see that the total cases are 40,151 all over the country. We can also see the number of total cases, the number of deaths, the number of tests, as well as the total tests came as positive. The 873 deaths have been occurred due to the coronavirus in Pakistan, and we can see that 11,341 people have been recovered from this COVID-19. There are different figures of provinces including Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan, KPK, Islamabad and Azad Jammu Kashmir. The main purpose of putting this slide in my video is that we can say that coronavirus or the positive check which was proposed by Malthusian theory in 1798 still exists in today's world. As we know that Pakistan is a developing country and the Malthusian theory of population seems very valid in developing countries like India, Pakistan as well as Bangladesh. So Pakistan is one of the main or the major example which followed the principles or the assumptions proposed by Malthus. Now, criticism of Malthusian theory of population. The Malthusian theory of population has been widely discussed and criticized during the 19th and early 20th century. Some of the criticisms are as follows. Number one, the mathematical form of the theory was wrong. The mathematical formulation of Malthusian doctrine that food supply increases in arithmetic progression and population increases in geometrical progressions has not been proved empirically in 25 years. Rather, the food supply has increased more than in the arithmetical progressions, while population growth has not been in the geometrical progressions, so as to double the population in 25 years. Failed to foresee the opening up of new areas. Malthus had a narrow vision and was particularly influenced by local conditions in England. He failed to foresee the opening up of new areas of Australia, the United States and Argentina, where extensive farming of virgin land led to increased production of food. And as a result, different countries like England on the continent of the Europe have been provided with abundant supplies of cheap food. This has made impossible with rapid improvement in the means of transport, a factor almost overlooked by Malthus. No country need fear starvation and misery if it produces sufficient food for its increasing population these days. Number 3. Applied a static economic law to a period of time. The Malthusian notion that the food supply increases in arithmetical progression is based on a static economic law at any one time, that is, the law of diminishing return. Malthus could not foresee the unprecedented increase in scientific knowledge and agricultural inventions over a period of time, which have stayed the law of diminishing returns. Consequently, the food supply has increased much faster than in arithmetical progressions. Malthus have been proved wrong not only in the advanced countries but also in the developing countries like India with the Green Revolution. Number 4. Neglected the main power aspects in population. One of the principal weaknesses of Malthus, though, has been that he neglected the manpower aspect in population growth. He was a pessimist and every increase in population dreaded. He forgot, according to canon, that a baby comes to the world not only with a mouth and a stomach but also with a pair of hands. This implies that an increase in the population means an increase in the manpower, which may tend to increase not only agriculture but industrial production and thus make the country rich by an equitable distribution of wealth and income. As rightly pointed out by Seligman, the problem of population is not merely one of the mere size, but of efficient production and equitable distribution. Thus, the increase in population may also be very necessary. Number 5. Population not related to food supply but to total wealth. The Malthusian theory rests on a weak relationship between population and food supply. In fact, the right relationship is between population and total wealth of the country. If a country is rich materially and even does not produce enough food for its population, it can feed the people well by importing foodstuff in exchange for its products or money. Number 6. Importance given to only food grains for livelihood. Malthusian theory gave importance to only food grains for livelihood. But for livelihood, food grains alone are not enough. Fruits, meats, fish, milks, eggs, for etc. can also be used as food. They have high growth rate in comparison to the population growth. For instance, a good breed of hen lays 240 eggs in a year. Similarly, one fish in a year multiplies manifold. Thus, Malthus took an unrealistic view in comparing the production of food grains, which increases in arithmetical progressions, with the population growth, which increases in geometrical progression. Number 7. Increase in population, the result of declining death rate. The Malthusian theory is one-sided. It takes the increase in population as a result of rising birth rate, whereas population has grown considerably the world over due to decline in death rate. Malthus could not foresee the marvelous advancement in the field of medical science which have controlled fatal diseases and made human life longer. This has been particularly so in underdeveloped countries like India, Bangladesh, where the Malthusian theory is said to be operate. Now, number 8. Empirical evidences prove this theory wrong. Empirically, it has been proved by different demographics that population growth is a function of the level of per capita income. When per capita income increases rapidly, it lowers the fertility rate and the rate of population growth declines. Population tends to become stationary because people refuses to lower their standard of living. This has actually happened in the case of Japan, France, and some other Western countries. Number 9. Preventive checks do not pertain to moral restraint. Malthus was essentially a religious man who laid emphasis on moral restraint to control population. But he could not visualize that human beings would invent contraceptives and other family planning devices for birth control. Moral restraint alone cannot help the control increase in population. Family planning is essential as a preventive check. Number 10. Difference between sexual desires and desire for children. Malthus could not make any distinction between sexual desire and desire to have children. People have sexual desire, but desire to have children depends on the social, religious, and cultural factors. Number 11. Sexual desires not the same. Malthus assumed that sexual desire is the same in human beings. In fact, it differs from person to person and depends on age, health, and psychological and environmental factors. Number 12. Positive checks not due to overpopulation. Malthus' pessimism and religious education led him to believe that overpopulation was a heavy burden on the earth, which was automatically lessened by God in the form of misery, wars, famines, flood, diseases, etc. But all these are natural calamities which are not peculiar to overpopulated countries. They visit even those countries where the population is on the decline or stationary, such as France and Japan. Number 13. Malthus are false prophet. The Malthusian theory is not applicable to countries for which it was propounded. In the West European countries, the bogey and pessimism of Malthus has been overcome. His prophecy that misery will stop these countries if they fail to check the growth of population through preventive checks has been proved wrong by a decline in the birth rate, adequacy of food supply, and increase in the agriculture and industrial production. Therefore, Malthus has proved to be a false prophet. Number 14. Not relevant to modern population problem. The Malthusian theory of population is not much of relevance to the modern population problems because it does not explain the reason for declining birth rate in different developing countries, the relationship between birth rate and the death rate, the effect of migration and urbanization, etc. Thus, as pointed out by Bloch, the Malthusian theory is a silent on the crucial questions of the determinants of population growth. Applicability of Malthusian theory of population. Despite the weaknesses of Malthusian theory, it also contains much truth. The Malthusian doctrine may not be applicable to the Western Europe and England, but its principles too have become the part and parcel of the people of these countries. If these lands do not face the problems of overpopulation and misery, it is all due to the bogey and pessimism of Malthusianism. In fact, the people of Europe were made wiser by Malthus, who forewarned them the evils of overpopulation, and they started to adopt the measures to ward it off. The very fact that people use preventive checks like late marriages and various contraceptions and birth control measures on an extensive scale proves the validity of Malthusian law. People of these countries started to adopt the measure towards the preventive checks like late marriages and various contraceptive and birth control measures, which leads to a happy, healthy life. The benefits of family planning will lead to increased education, empower women, improve infant health, improve mother health, decreases the risk of HIV and AIDS, it saves the environment, it also supports the partnership of husband and wife, and ultimately it ends the hunger and poverty. So people of these countries adopted these measures to lead a happy, healthy life. Malthusian theory support. Even famous economists like Marshall and Pigou and different socialists like Darwin were also influenced by the principle when they incorporated Malthus theory in their own theories. And Keynes, initially overwrought by the Malthusian fear of overpopulation, later wrote some economic consequences of declining population. The Malthusian doctrine may not be applicable now to its place of original, but its influences spread over two-thirds of this universe inhabited by the underdeveloped countries. Implementation of Malthusian theory in case of Pakistan. If we concentrate on Malthusian theory, we can say that it is true at least for Pakistan. Pakistan's population is increasing rapidly and it is unable to produce the various resources at the same rate as of the population growth. Pakistan is not able to produce sufficient food for its people. Mostly people are starving, not able to purchasing things for their basic necessities. As Pakistan is also facing the shortage of food as compared to its population. It is abundant in population and Pakistan's ranked 6th amongst the highly populous countries in the world. Conclusion. After studying the importance and shortcoming of the Malthusian theory, we can say that the theory is still valid in modern times. According to the American economist Professor Clark, the repeated criticism of Malthusian theory proves its originality and truth. This theory has become truth in the underdeveloped countries of Asia as well as some countries of Africa. Even some of the leading economists of the world like Marshall, Ally, Townsend, Patton, Walker and Clark observed that the Malthusian theory has remained appropriate and undestroyed in the process of controversy. In short, Malthus' theory may have stated the partial truth, so no one can deny it. In this diagram, we can simply say that the time is taken on the horizontal axis while the population is taken on the vertical axis. We can see the population growth rate worldwide as well as we can see that how population is growing in developed as well as in the developing countries. As we have studied that the people living in the developed countries used preventive checks to control the population, so their population growth rate is very slower as compared to the developing countries. In developing countries, there is a significant need of adopting these preventive or the population control tools to reduce the overpopulation, which is a very crucial dilemma of these countries. Thank you very much, my dear students. I hope this latest and updated information on the population theory of Malthus will help you a lot during your exams. Stay home, stay healthy. Thank you and Allah Hafiz. Best of luck for your exams.